You are looking live at St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, in Steelers Training Camp 2023. Where would you rather be than right here, right now? Good afternoon, Steeler Nation, and welcome once again to Training Camp Live, brought to you by FedEx. Our coverage continuing of Steelers Training Camp 2023. This is practice number 3 and day 4 on campus. And Max, not only the follow-up of what was a pretty interesting day yesterday, but a celebratory day here for the Steelers as they announce the Hall of Honor class of 2023.
Yes, and indeed this Saturday here, I know it's day 3 of camp, but most importantly, this is the NFL's kickoff weekend. This is the Together Again weekend by the NFL. So the Steelers decided, hey, let's announce our Hall of Honor class today, and we have 4 tremendous people that we'll talk about a little bit later in the show, but it's a very good day. It's a cool day. We've had 2 really hot days the last 2 days, and now it's kind of cooled off. We got a little bit of a cloud cover to help cool us off.
Yeah, yesterday in particular, steamy, sweltery, pick your adjective for how uncomfortably hot it was. And 3 guys affected by it, missing some practice time because of it. DeMarvin Leal, Connor Hayward, and Deontay Johnson. And Mike Tomlin not complaining about that because he wants them uncomfortable. He wants them pushed. He wants to see who can work through it and who can persevere through it. Not something that is unique to Mike Tomlin, but at the same time, that always makes me take a step back when I watch these NFL guys go through what they go through in these conditions and think, yeah, the worse it gets, the better off it's going to be for the team in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you feel like you're working backwards, but it's kind of that way that as the attrition of the season hits you, you need to be able to deal with adversity. And when one guy goes down, next man up mentality that Mike Tomlin likes to talk about, and this is one of those moments where you're dealing with weather that's unseasonably hot, and guys, no matter how much you prepare, you hydrate, you still can never compare to true game-like conditions, and it's going to happen. It could happen in the middle of a drive. It could happen, 7 games into the season. So to have these adversities hitting
if you're
them,
chasing someone down after a turnover.
That is correct. It has happened on many occasions. Now they don't have the oxygen shakes down there like I had, but you have that. And I talked about cramps all the time about how no matter what you do, is still going to catch you. And Connor Hayward, it caught him in the middle of a play. He was taking a deep crossing route, and you saw him kind of pull up, and his calves were tight. Calvin Austin was complaining about it on the sidelines. He made it off the field, but those are the type of situations you have to be prepared for. And for young guys having to run in and jump in and just fit in with the drive and just keep everything going as normal. So practicing for game time situations in a controlled environment.
Yeah, that's something that Minkah Fitzpatrick had addressed upon his arrival here at St. Vincent. He talked about how he likes camp because of the adversity of it, the long meetings, the long hours, the long practices in tough conditions. Minkah is of the opinion you find out who you are individually, collectively as an offensive or defensive unit, and as a team. And Mike Tomlin, Max, got as specific yesterday in talking about the challenges of working through days such as yesterday. He said it challenges you in terms of an execution of assignment standpoint and an execution of motor skills. I mean, sometimes you just lose it out there, I guess.
Well, yeah. Physically, your body does not do what you want it to do. Mentally, you're like, hey, legs, I need you to move a little bit faster. I need you to get legs are like, nope, I can't do it. There's a cramp coming. I know you can't feel it, but we know this ahead of time, so we're not going to let you do it. And you just have to kind of rep through those type of things. I mean, this is where desperation breeds innovation. And for desperation, that means dealing with camp conditions, dealing with it. And I think for Minkah, the other thing is not a lot of teams do this anymore. There's only about 10 or 11 teams around the league that still go off-site for their actual training camps. Because
most the number 7.
Oh, it even moved further down. Yeah, because last I read a couple weeks ago, it was 11, but now it's 7 because everybody's trying to get these homogenous at my facility, keep everything logistically tight for what we're going to do during the season. But the Steelers, since 1966, have been up here outside of a COVID year, have been coming here for the better part of 60 years, and it's yielded a great result.
Let's hit a few of the highlights from yesterday, at least from my perspective. Be curious to get yours since I talked to Wolfley afterward and you beforehand. But we saw Broderick Jones, I think it was 2 snaps with the number 1s.
Yeah.
Joey Porter Jr. had a more substantial look with the number 1s because we finally saw, I say finally, it was the second practice, but let me rephrase that, the much anticipated shift of Patrick Peterson from outside cornerback to slot cornerback, and then even some safety work for Patrick Peterson. Allen Robinson looking very good as the slot receiver so far.
Yeah.
Both in terms of his health and what he's doing with the ball. Calvin Austin, the third, I thought a bounce-back day yesterday after an unfortunate day the first day, and 7 shots, Max. The Steelers' signature, whatever you want to call it, 2-point short yardage goal line drill that they open every team practice with, and that got heated, as it always does. What was your most intriguing or interesting development yesterday?
Well, I thought you pointed it out, talking about Allen Robinson and kind of having a solid day in the slot. I thought 7 shots was that moment because he had that touchdown against Chandon Sullivan over on the left side, ran a little quick out route. Kenny Pickett ID'd him really quickly, got the ball on him fast, and that's where you start to see the competition brewing. Now, I know we still don't have pads on. It's still not a true assessment, but as we get more and more into this, as players get acclimated to training camp before we get to the pads, it's good to see that the intensity level is ramping up, and that day one was more of an offensive win day. Yesterday was a little bit more of defense. They kind of met the challenge and the pace that the offense was coming. Now today I expect to see a little bit more of attrition, tug-of-war style, whereas offense wins some, defense wins some, and you start to see things balancing out as we get further into camp.
Your buddy Craig Wolfley talked about this on the show with me yesterday, and I think you guys hit this morning. The D-line, the edge rushers in particular, were getting to the pocket so often and so quickly, they were being screamed at not to touch the quarterback.
Yes, and then Cam Hayward
told the offense,
"Hey, O-line, stay off the quarterback," which gave me a little PTSD moment because I'm like, wait a second. I was about to yell back at Cam because I'm used to Cam being the young guy. For his first 4 years, we were together, and so now to see him as that leader, kind of goading guys, I'm like, nope, the new offensive line has to answer that. But I did have that moment where I was kind of wanting to get on him because I actually had a moment where I was on the quarterback because of the defensive line, and I don't like to kind of hark on that, but a guy by the name of James Harrison was the defender in the moment, so you kind of take it as a pass, like that's going to happen when you have a guy like James Harrison against you.
That's a pretty good unintentional transition here because I wanted to talk a little bit about that Hall of Honor class.
There we go.
That was just announced today. James Harrison, Ray Mansfield, Jerry Mullins, and Aaron Smith. We can talk about James Harrison first. We're going to do this in no particular order of significance, but James Harrison, clearly the most unique of the 4 in that he was cut 4 times and ended up winning a Defensive Player of the Year award in 2008. 5-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champ, author of maybe the greatest play in Super Bowl history. But Max, if I had to come up with one James Harrison play, the quintessential James Harrison moment, it would have to be when the Steelers were playing the Cleveland Browns and the Browns were running the Wildcat, and James Harrison hit Josh Cribbs.
Oh, his own former teammate
from Kent State.
Yeah.
And Josh Cribbs didn't play anymore, and Harrison summed it up afterwards as, hey, no more Wildcat.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the impact he had on a game.
And when you're talking about guys who change the way the game is played, I mean, the influence that James Harrison has, and I'm sure we'll be talking about a Hall of Fame nomination because he'll be up very soon for that. But he changed the way people perceived him. He was a guy that was feared by offensive linemen. Like, you did not want to see 92 lining up against you. And I had the distinct honor and privilege of lining up behind him across from him for years. And what he did from an intimidation standpoint and from an actual physical play standpoint, I mean, we could talk about that play with the Browns. We could talk about the Colt McCoy play against the Browns. Hell, we could talk about the Browns fan. I mean, he decimated the city of Cleveland. As an Akron guy, he had something against the city of Cleveland, and some of his best games came against them. But, of course, like you said, the penultimate play was the Super Bowl, getting the interception, running it back for a touchdown right before the end of the first half, and a very deserving member to be joining this distinct Hall of Honor class.
And am I remembering this correctly? Did he get his first real shot at significant defensive playing time when Joey Porter got thrown out of a game in Cleveland before the game started for getting in a fight with running back William Green?
Correct. You are very correct. Before the line of demarcation in pregame warmups turn to the 45-yard line. It used to be right at the 50. Like, hey, you get half the field, the other team gets the other half of the field. Well, Joey Porter used exactly 49.99 yards of the field, and he would stalk the field back and forth, and then, of course, he finds his guy, starts talking to him, and then a fight ensues in pregame warm-ups. And then, of course, James Harrison steps in as a number 3 outside backer and plays with Clark Hagans, and thus the birth of Debo, a.k.a. James Harrison, begins.
Aaron Smith, another member of that Hall of Honor class. Aaron, not a decorated guy, just one Pro Bowl, but 160 games and 152 starts with the Steelers. He played the non-glamorous 3-4 end position where you do all the dirty work and get none of the glory, but 2 Super Bowl championships. Max, I think there's 2 kind of guys in NFL locker rooms, guys who are highly regarded because they're really good guys who are highly regarded because they're really good players. And then there's Aaron Smith, who is revered because he was both.
Yeah, listen, I can't talk enough about the impact that Aaron Smith had, not only on the defense, but on our team. I mean, he was a guy that if you took a poll and you said, hey, who's one of the most underrated teammates on your team, his entire career, Aaron Smith would probably be the leading vote getter year in and year out because, like you said, it was a non-glamorous position. It was a position where everything was predicated on funneling all the work to the linebackers. So the Larry Foots and the James Ferriers of the world got a lot of the recognition, got a lot of the tackles, but it was because of the work of Aaron Smith being able to take on a double team and force 2 offensive linemen to get absorbed by him, by his play, and then allow for the linebackers to make plays in the run game, but also absorbing guys so that the outside linebackers could make plays in the pass game. So it was a very inglorious position. I mean, it was one of those things we were actually trying to lobby to see if we could get Aaron Smith moved to the defensive tackle classification because the stat line is a lot smaller and you can get more accolades because of it. He only gets 1 Pro Bowl because when you're a defensive end in a 3-4 versus a 4-3 defensive end, the stats pale in comparison. But his impact on our team was definitely felt by all of his teammates. All of us appreciated him. He's a guy I had to go against in practice. Outside of James Harrison, I had Aaron Smith, and both these guys are in the Hall of Honor, and that was where I had to cut my teeth in this league.
Aaron Smith, a 4th-round pick out of Northern Colorado. James Harrison, undrafted out of Kent State, and the cut 4 times thing. Ray Mansfield. Now this is going back a little before your
time. A little
time.
Offensive guy finally. Thank you.
Center. 2nd-round pick of the Eagles in 1963.
Number 18 overall.
Yeah, well, back
was
then
a 2nd-round pick.
There were fewer teams.
Now. Yeah.
You picked up on that. Ray Mansfield winds up coming to the Steelers. He was a defensive tackle for Philadelphia, and he played that for 1 season in Pittsburgh in 1965, then took over at center in 1966. And Ray Mansfield, Max, is significant. Great stat by Bob Labriola in the pre-show when they announced the Hall of Honor. There were 5 players who were on the team when Chuck Noll came in 1969 who survived to the first Super Bowl championship in 1974. And Ray Mansfield was one of them, along with Sam Davis, Rocky Bleier, Bobby Walden, and Andy Russell. Ray Mansfield, a 2-time Super Bowl champ as the center of that offensive line, which was unheralded, but not by Franco Harrison, Rocky Bleier, and the people who ran behind it.
Well, and that's really the birth of where the modern-day center, how we view this position in Steeler lore, it started with Ray Mansfield. He was the predecessor and the precursor to a Mike Webster, which then to a Dermontti Dawson, and then to Jeff Hardings, and then we get to Marquise Pouncey, and now we're kind of searching for that linchpin in the middle. But all of those names, it starts with Ray Mansfield, and a.k.a. Ranger. That was his nickname because he loved the outdoors. And
eventually the old Ranger.
Yeah, eventually, yeah.
You get older, not younger.
Yes, exactly. But he was such an impactful individual. And like you said, bringing along other guys with him and being really instrumental in setting the precedent that we know now for the Steelers as being a rock in the middle. We always knew the team as a steel curtain defense, which developed during the 70s, but the center position offensively is another one that is a very highly touted position historically for the Steelers, and Ray Mansfield was that start.
Also a great character. Relatively modern era fans may not be aware of this, but there was a phenomenal book written about the Steelers in 1973 by a guy named Roy Blunt Jr., who worked for Sports Illustrated at the time, one of the preeminent football writers in the country, one of the best to ever do it, really. It's called About 3 Bricks Shy of a Load, the year the Pittsburgh Steelers were super but missed the bowl. And basically the premise was Roy Blunt Jr. was embedded with the team for the 1973 season, start to finish. And he wrote about what it's like to be embedded with a pro football team, start to finish. And Ray Mansfield's such an engaging character that he became a big part of that book, as did fellow Hall of Honor inductee Jerry Mullins.
Jerry Moon Mullins. And that's one of the things when you look at the history. I mean, I know we don't talk, everybody likes to think the start of the Steelers era was when they won their first Super Bowl, but you're talking about these stories that come up, that lead up to how do you make a championship team? How do you build a dynastical type of organization? And this is the early stages of that, because you have a guy like Jerry Mullins that a lot of people might not be familiar with, but of course, older, more seasoned Steelers fans will remember Jerry Moon Mullins and Ray Mansfield being those impactful figures as we get to the now modern era of the Steelers. But I think it's just tremendous when you look at what they did as players and their contributions to this team to get them to the place where we're at today, where you have 10,000 people out here wanting to come to training camp of all places. Not a game, but training camp practice with no shoulder pads on. That's the impact that these guys kind of laid the bricks for that.
Yeah, Mullins drafted out of USC on the 4th round, and he was part of the Chuck Noll
new era,
building of the dynasty team. And he lasted through the 4 Super Bowls of the 70s, 124 career games with the Steelers, 87 career starts. Again, this book, we were talking just before the show began. You were unaware of it. It should be required reading for Steelers fans. Again, About 3 Bricks Shy of a Load, and it's written by Roy Blunt Jr. I'm sure you can find it Amazon or a million places. Yeah. It is fascinating. The history of the team, particularly the pre-Super Bowl team, which was not necessarily successful, but intriguing nonetheless. St. Vincent College, the chief, Art Rooney Sr., some tremendous insights and reporting in that book by Roy Blunt Jr. You need to read it, Max.
I'm going to read it. I mean, you showed it to me. You sent me the text message of the book, so I'm going to look it up.
Well, I haven't sent the text yet.
You didn't? Then why did my screen light up? Okay, so you're just –
I'll get around to it.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, I mean, I can always watch this show again and figure out the name and type it up.
You get a great look at Aaron Smith on the sidelines.
Look at Smitty, right next to Jeremy Tooman.
Of course, visiting today. Jeremy Tooman, I noticed you had lunch with him yesterday.
Yeah, he's doing the scouting internship up here.
Santonio Holmes on campus today.
Yeah, a lot of my former teammates, man. The Steelers legends are out.
As Bill Cowher liked to call him, San Antonio Holmes.
So, yeah, exactly. It was tough. It was tough, but – we got it right now. We got it right this time around. But this is awesome. Saturday here, a big day for the team. Mike Tomlin's going to address the crowd a little bit later, and we'll preview that Hall of Honor class on the field and unveil them to the audience. You at home get a little head start on everybody else as we give you a little bit of a bio. But a very fun day, and I can't wait to go down there and give Big A hug when I see him. Not as big A as he used to be. He's slimmed down, but still Big A in our hearts.
The alumni are everywhere here at training camp every year, and each day it seems there are 2 or 3 different ones.
You never know who's going to show up.
It's almost, to me at least, from the outside looking in, a collegiate feel.
Yes.
Like you go back for homecoming. How does that work specifically when you quit? Do you just assume you're welcome anytime, or are you told, hey, come on back?
Well, I think the Steelers have really made it a concerted effort to make sure that they engage the alumni. And engage guys. I mean, let's face it, when you're tied for the most Super Bowls in NFL history, you have a lot of alumni that were successful here, that were household names that you can draw from. And I think having, like yesterday, Jeff Hardings was here. Got to see Jeff. Hadn't seen Jeff in a long time, and we won a Super Bowl together. He was our center at the time. And then the day before that, Matt Spaeth is here. And then a bunch of guys are still coming back as we progress through training camp. And
by the end of it, there will be a roster.
Yeah, an entire roster.
You can put a team together.
Yeah, because yesterday when we took a picture with Teresa Varley, I put it up on my Instagram, and it was Mark Bruner, Jeremy Tooman, Jeff Hardings, and myself. And that's 4 of us just right there. And a couple of us are on staff. Like Chidi, I didn't know where
Bruner
Chidi
has
was.
To be here.
Well, he has no choice.
Yeah.
He has no choice. Chidi Awoma has no choice as well.
Scouting
and the scouting responsibility. Ike Taylor will be here next week. So, I mean, we have a lot of guys, and it's great to see everybody kind of come back together and be welcomed. I think that's the other thing. A lot of organizations, you don't get that same type of reception, and the alumni department doesn't really push to get guys around, but the Steelers make a concerted effort to make sure they engage the alumni and the legends and bring them around.
Yeah, I'll never forget one of the most profound things Ike Taylor ever said, and I quote, "You only get so many chances to make a first impression."
That is very true. That is very true. And I think that's how we have to look at it. There's Santonio right there on the screen talking to George Pickens, giving a little influence. That's vet leadership right there.
Had him on a radio show during camp last year, and when he sat down at the table to begin the segment, I said, "Santonio, what have you been up to?" And he said, "Just being the MVP, baby."
Listen, and only 56 other guys can say that. Yeah. Soon to be a 58th, but I think that's just kind of the remark and the maturation. I mean, seeing Tone and knowing what he's doing, his work in Columbus, he's a motivational speaker.
And
he's
you think they're talking ball right there? They're not just passing the time?
No, they're definitely talking ball.
Yeah,
it is all ball. Because, look, you even see him talking about the depth when you have that DB and how to make the breaks and stuff.
Walking, little mini walkthrough. Look at that. This is fantastic. And that he cares that much to come back and work with this kid.
For the next generation. I think a lot of our guys would love to do this and would love to be in this position. I mean, last year I got to have those conversations with Dan Moore and, looking forward to finally meeting the new guys, the Spencer Andersons, the Broderick Jones, the new crop of guys coming in, because I think when you impart that knowledge, you also understand you're setting the stage for the standard that is the Steelers. Like when you come here, this is what it means to be a Steeler, and we want to pour that in because we're still fans. Even though we're removed from the game as active players and wearing a jersey, we're still fans of our team, and we love this team, and we want to see it succeed because the better they do, guess what? The better that we get to do later, So it keeps the name relevant. So there's a self-serving purpose to it, but more so is selfless service.
Look at that coming out of the break there. Now Mike Tomlin coming over to say hello. Stuff happens like this up here every year, but it's always attention-getting to me.
It is. But I think when you have an organization like the Steelers, this is more commonplace. So when you're here, you expect this to happen. Now, if you go somewhere, I don't know, Cleveland, the Jets, somewhere else, you don't really get that many. Joe Namath is, can't walk out on the field and start giving Aaron Rodgers any tips. You know what I'm saying? Like at this point in his life. But you can have contemporary guys because guess what? We've been an organization that's put out a lot of guys who are not only in the Hall of Honor but in the Hall of Fame and guys who've been standout players. And to get that as George Pickens from a Super Bowl MVP, there's no better advice you can ask for.
And on the other side of that, Pickens is engaged there.
Yes.
It's not like, okay, what's this old guy going to tell me what it was like back in the – I mean, he's intent on getting this advice. George Pickens is a pretty young guy. Santonio's not an old guy, but the MVP was older. A while ago.
Yeah,
right?
older. He's older. But I think some things at certain positions, as much as things change, some things don't change. And beating press man coverage is not going to change. From 2009 to 2023, you still got to beat press man. And I think if you can give any type of knowledge, any type of tips, and Santonio's watching. So he watched his rookie year. So I'm sure there's some things that he picks up, just like when I look at offensive linemen and I see footwork and technique. I'll go in there, hey man, try moving that heel out a little bit more. Give you a little bit more fluidity, open up your hips a little bit more so that you can stay square. Those are the type of things we offer because we have that inherent experience available to us.
Well, let's stick with Pickens because one of our things on the to-do list here for this show is to talk about the second-year players, the sophomores, if you will. We talked about the rookies at great length yesterday. And Pickens, of course, one of those guys. He spoke yesterday about wanting to get 1,000 yards, about how wanting to make the Pro Bowl, wanting to win the Super Bowl. But he was also asked about the first play of the first practice, which was Kenny Pickett play action deep to George Pickens against Patrick Peterson coverage. Now, the ball fell incomplete. Some people may have thought Patrick Peterson grabbed and was guilty of pass interference. There aren't any officials out here yet, so there were no yellow flags. But
alleged. It's alleged.
Pickens said that he thought it was an explosive hint that the ball is going down the field more. Now, Dale Lawley of Steelers.com spoke with offensive coordinator Matt Canada, and Matt said, well, it wasn't done by design, throwing it deep on the first play. It was organic. Kenny made the read, and that's where the ball should have gone because it was one-on-one coverage outside. My question to you is Pickens right? Are they going to throw the ball downfield more?
Well, I think you have to assume that. When you have a dynamic receiver like George Pickens and his ability to make circus catch after circus catch, as he did last season, you have to think you're going to want to stretch the ball down the field a lot more. And he has that elite speed. And then you throw in a Calvin Austin III, who we know is an absolute burner. Now, we didn't get to see him last year. He was a part of that rookie class with George Pickens. But if these two guys get into the game, you have to think you've got to stretch the field. This is not going to be a dink and dunk, matriculate the football, Hank Stram style down the field. It's going to be thrown down the field with a lot of yardage.
Some of the greatest NFL films clips of all time, by the way.
Oh, yeah, they are. They are. Like the early NFL, like the Rights of Autumn type of plays, that's what you get. And I think Kenny Pickett knows that I need to get it because yesterday's practice, there was that long 35-yard pass to Calvin Austin III on a streak route down the sideline. So I think as much as Matt Canada wants to say that's organic, I think that is a precipice for them because at the end of the day, you need to make explosive plays to get in the position to score touchdowns. And they didn't do that very well last year, so that's going to be an improvement. Unlocking that in the middle of the field are going to be two very big emphasis, I think, throughout this camp.
One of the things Pickens said is it's going to ultimately come down to where the ball goes and, the quarterback's decision to pull the trigger on those plays. Now, I think last year there was maybe a reluctance on the part of the quarterbacks to take those shots at times, and there was definitely an emphasis on the part of the coaches to avoid turnovers, which can happen when you take such shots. But Kenny Pickett, who's also a second-year guy, but a much more established guy now, he's QB1 instead of QB3 as things commence here at St. Vincent College. Is he going to be a little more aggressive? I mean, Pickett, admittedly, when he took over as the starter last year, Max, he was just trying to run the play, just trying to get it's supposed to go here. Is he going to be a little bit more of a mindset that when he sees something at the line, he's going to put the ball somewhere where it maybe necessarily wasn't designed to go, but if it works, who cares?
Well, I think you have to be. And I think we saw that early on, and even in the second half of that Jets game, right, trying to force the ball down the field to Chase Claypool, and it resulting in a couple of interceptions. But then as you get deeper into the season, those plays to Deontay Johnson deep down the field in Carolina, they start connecting. Oh, I'm sorry, that was Mitch Trubisky, actually. As we get later into the season, those plays start to connect. And you have to be able to be resilient enough to shake off the incompletion or the bad play that turns into an interception and still not get gun shy. And I think we've seen that early on in camp with Kenny Pickett. I'm just going to take what's given to me. And if it's open, it's open. I saw another play under pressure that went to Miles Boykin down the sideline. He threw it into triple coverage and made the completion. So the high risk, high reward has to be kind of diligently assessed in your mind and compartmentalized because you can't be scared to throw it when you see it. Trust yourself, trust your knowledge base. And I think Kenny Pickett's developing that type of sense, and we're getting it early and often in camp.
The other thing that is, I'm going to say, remarkable to me about Pickett, because he's just a second-year guy, and he had a good year last year. He progressed well, but he hasn't necessarily reinvented the NFL wheel for quarterbacks yet.
Yeah.
But this was evident even last year, Max. There's a likability factor with this kid. There's a respect from his teammates, even the veteran guys. I mean, have you seen much of this where – particularly a high-profile position where a guy's supposed to come in and be, a quote-unquote star.
Touch of arrogance.
Sometimes veterans are of the mindset, hey, until you do something, I don't care who you are.
Yes.
This guy is –
You're talking about Ben and Alan.
I'm not talking about anybody in particular. No, don't read anything in that. No. I'm just saying a lot of times guys have to earn it, and I think Pickett had to earn it, but I think he earned it incredibly quickly.
Well, I think when you get tossed in the middle of the season when you're not expected to play and you're thrown in a game where you're behind and you know that you've not been scoring a lot of points, you kind of get trial by fire. And I think we kind of saw his progression, his maturity in live, real-time fashion during the season. And, we remember the turning point game against Miami, and we remember the run at the end of the year. And so I think from that and then the injuries we had to battle and all the adversity that was faced last season, and he just kind of smiled in the face of it. He got knocked out of a game, had to come back, and so you realize this kid's tough. But I think a lot of things, like you said, it's the humble personality, and also he's an older rookie than we're used to. Because he had the fifth year.
He was in college for 9 years.
Yeah, exactly. He was in college forever. He played for Pitt for a long time. But, he kind of already came in as a more mature individual, so he understood what it was to be a part of this. And he's seen the Steelers up close and personal. They share a building, for God's sakes. So, the kid could come a little bit early and watch the end of Steelers practice. You had a chance to watch guys like a Ben Roethlisberger. And so I think he understood coming in what his place was. I think a lot of rookies come in, if you're not from the region, you're not from the area, you don't watch the team, you don't know. So it's like, I got to put on this false bravado. But he came in humble, willing to learn, a guy that speaks to everybody in the lunchroom. I can't tell you, every time I walk past Kenny, we always say hello. I mean, that's just the type of endearing character that he has as a player, and I think that earns the respect of the guys.
It's funny. Right after they drafted him, the day after they drafted him, we had Art Rooney on ESPN Pittsburgh, and Art talked about those intangibles as a huge factor in why the Steelers were so high on Kenny Pickett, and how he was going to represent the team properly, and he was going to be humble, and he was going to be well-liked by his teammates. I mean, you got to be able to play first, but if you get the guy who can play and you get all that, that's a home run. That's why you pick a guy in the first round. And I think they had, insider trading because of the shared facility thing. And it's worked out exactly that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, all you have to do is just linger a little bit after practice, and then you see all the Pitt Panther kids run out as we're running into the locker room. They're running out we have 4 fields out over at UPMC Sports Complex where our practice facility is. So we get fields 1 and 2, and then they get fields 3 and 4 on the far end. So as we're ending practice or we're doing our extra work on the side, the Pitt kids are making their way to the far end of the practice field to get ready for practice. So if you sit there 10, 15, 20 minutes, guess what? I can kind of put eyes on that guy. And I don't think that hurt. And I think, like you said, it's working out thus far because they've had a lot of information. And let's face it, their OC was Mark Whipple as well, former Steelers offensive coordinator. So I think he might have a rapport with the Steelers side just a little bit as well to give some intimate knowledge about him.
Worked out pretty well for that guy, number 98, to Marvin Leal, as well last year, even though he had an injury kind of interrupt his progress. But a guy, Max, who came to the Steelers with the reputation as a tweener, weren't sure if he'd play in the interior of the defensive line or on the edge. Not only did he play both of those places, he did some dropping into coverage, did a number of things, so many that he couldn't remember them all back during OTAs. But man, as he arrived here as a confident guy who, as he put it, now knows who he is and what he's capable of.
Yeah, it's funny what an off-season, a real off-season does to rejuvenate yourself and get you to kind of collect your thoughts. Because as a rookie, you come in, it's a whirlwind. Like your college football season into combine training, into combine performance, into pre-draft analysis, to then getting drafted, to coming straight to mini camp, OTAs, then going straight into training camp. It's a whirlwind. It seems like a 9-month-long process that never ends. And DeMarvin Leal, like you said, took it all in stride and was asked to do, and he had a mentality of just use me, right? I'll play anywhere you want me to play as long as I can get on the field. And he started to excel. We saw him when TJ Watt went down.
Next man up, right?
Yeah, next man up. And he becomes like an elephant in. Now, mind you, he's about 300 pounds. So asking him to be an outside linebacker was a tough get. But, a lot of people started making comparisons. This is what LaVon Kirkland looked like when he was playing. But I thought he did some really good things. The athleticism.
I'm not seeing Kirkland.
Well, but they said by size.
I'm
by
seeing
size.
2/3 of Kirkland.
Yeah. LaVon was a lot larger. But, for those that did not get to see LaVon Kirkland play live, that's what his player comp was. But I thought just being an elephant in, being a guy who could play interior and sub, but also back out into the outside on base personnel, as a rookie, that's a lot of responsibility in this type of defense with Terrell Austin, which is a configuration off of Keith Butler and Dick LeBeau's defense. It's a tough job, and he handled it in stride until he got injured. And so I expect big things from him when he can kind of solidify himself. He knows he's more interior than exterior.
I'm amazed he put on the weight that he did without really changing his body type or losing quickness.
Yeah.
And he did it in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Or so it seemed.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very short amount of time. And like you said, putting on good weight and understanding that muscle weighs more than fat, is a big thing. And he definitely put on a lot of muscle, and he still has that quickness, still has that explosiveness that you want to see from a guy who could potentially move to the exterior in certain situations.
We talked a little bit already today about Calvin Austin III, the wide receiver, with a bounce-back day in both of our estimations yesterday. It's interesting to me. I almost kind of put Allen Robinson on the back burner thinking about that slot receiver position because there was so much buzz about Calvin Austin III in the springtime because he's got that incredible speed. And you listen to a guy such as Najee Harris at minicamp call him a unicorn and a guy who's going to really mess with the heads of defensive coordinators. And I start thinking, okay, there's your slot guy, and he do the motions and everything else and run him around. Allen Robinson, okay, veteran. He's been on a couple of teams already. He's 10 years in, getting closer to the end than the beginning. Allen Robinson has announced his presence with authority out here. And Calvin Austin struggled day one. To his credit, bounced back day two. But he's got some work to do.
Yeah.
Or so it seems all of a sudden.
Well, he lost a year with the foot injury, so he already did not get as much time. He didn't even get pads last year. Remember that. He got injured very early in camp. Had a couple of good one-on-one matchups in this type of environment against DeMonte KZ, and we really saw DeMonte KZ kind of come on form because of those battles with Calvin Austin. But I think the expectation, knowing that you have more than one option at slot, and if that 4.43 speed that he brings from Memphis can correlate onto this field out here in an Acrisure Stadium and stadiums across the league, it's going to be a problem for a lot of people because now you have a changeup. You know, if I could throw out speed one play and then bring in the sure-handed receiver the next play, that causes problems for defenses, and that's what you want to create at the wide receiver position. Where can we create mismatches and matchup problems for teams? And Calvin Austin has that elite speed. I was talking about the play he had earlier yesterday, was that 35-yard, and it didn't even look like he was running full speed when he caught that 35-yard, but blew past two defenders. So if that gets unleashed, I think we could see a lot more, and I'm hoping health stays on the side of Calvin Austin so that we can get to see that more often.
Yeah, I look at them right now, and they haven't really done much special teams yet, just some, walkthrough type of stuff. But he looks like the punt returner to me, Max.
Yeah.
And then in terms of what he brings to the offense, I don't know because they have a lot of options.
Yeah.
And not only, we talked a little bit about Robinson in the slot, but Connor Hayward, I don't know what position to call him. But you want to talk options, you want to talk about a guy who can make some plays, you want to talk about a guy who's going to help your club when it's winning time, dial up number 83. You could do a lot worse.
Yes. You know what? We should change him from the Meatball Express to just option because I think when you look at Connor Hayward and you look at the size, he gets lost in the tight end room. Because you have all those skyscrapers now in there. I mean, between Freiermuth, 6'5", Gentry, 6'9", Darnell Washington, 6'7", you kind of forget that Connor Hayward's in that position. And he's not a fullback because he's a little bit taller than a fullback. He kind of fits into that H-back utility role. But wherever you line him up, he is a problem. Whether it's in the wing, whether it's coming out of the backfield, in line on the line of scrimmage, Connor Hayward knows how to make plays, and he's deceptively fast. I think when teams look at him, they kind of see the structure, and you kind of look at the midsection. You're like, nah, this guy can't quite get there. But he has speed to break away from people. Already in camps, had a number of big plays down the middle. A lot of unmatched plays, getting lost in zone coverage. Darnell Washington ran a clear-out route, and Connor Hayward kind of hit in his hip pocket and then made an in-cut, and nobody was there because everybody was focusing on Darnell Washington. And I think Connor Hayward just presents a guy who knows how to play, and I think we might be calling his nickname Option because I think that's what he provides to you. He provides an option to get the ball out and progress the ball downfield.
I hate to say I told you so.
Yeah?
In this case, I kind of like to say I told you so because when they drafted this guy last year out of Michigan State.
Oh, geez, here we go.
I said he's going to be a clutch performer. He's going to be a playmaker in a variety of ways. He's going to be a great teammate. He's going to be a positive addition. And everybody just said, you're just saying that because he went to your school. But, Cam's little brother, the football IQ, Max, is phenomenal. And a couple of the plays he made in college, the bigger the game and the bigger the moment, that's when he showed up the most.
Well, Atlanta. Talk about Atlanta. That was the longest pass play of the season for us in his hometown, doing it there a day after they went to visit their father's grave. I mean, there's no better story. I mean, you pretty much wrote a 30 for 30 in that moment, and then to have that type of performance, that type of play in that environment, like you said, the bigger the game, the bigger the moment, he shines. And I think that was when we started calling him the Meatball Express after that play because it's phenomenal how he just knows how to ratchet that intensity up. And I think that's due to the pedigree that is the Hayward family.
And he gets it, if it's catching the ball and taking a shot a helmet to the back while you're
Yeah.
doing it, but you have to hold on to it because you're in the end zone, or you're getting tackled, but you know you're short of the stick and you extend the ball. Just little simple things. Not everybody does all the time, but I think Connor Hayward is going to be impactful. I have no idea in terms of statistical projection or anything of that nature, but when the Steelers are winning games, he's going to be putting his hand in the pile toward that end.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is a guy that I have no doubt will be on this squad. Now, what position they will list him at when the final 53 comes, I have no clue. Can't tell you. But I guarantee you they could put an A for athlete or utility, and I think he would be fine. Just as long as he gets that 83 on game day, I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, and I think he's another guy that, depending on how often and how much they use him on offense, Max, he could be quite a special teamer as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he fits into that core 4 personality. You know, last year, punt and punt return team, he was definitely on the coverage team and the block units, and he acquitted himself well. I mean, I think he made actually a couple of plays in key moments in Acrisure Stadium. So he knows how to do it, and he's a guy that when you have a brother like Cam, you know, you can't help as a little brother just soak up what big brother's telling you. And if he's getting on everybody else, you have to know he knows, okay, let me just fall in line so I don't get yelled at, because I know what that yell looks like back at home.
Yeah. And last but not least, in our review of last year's draft class, some of the sophomores we've got our eye on this year. Mark Robinson, linebacker, inside linebacker. Maybe not yet, but on the way. Is that
I think
is
that's
that
a good
correct assessment?
Yeah.
Talked yesterday with the lineman about microwave or bake it. I think he's in the oven.
He might be in the easy bake oven.
But I'm starting to smell that turkey, and it's starting to smell pretty good.
Yeah, Mark Robinson is a guy. You have to remember, he only played 1 year of linebacker at Ole Miss before we drafted him. So technically, this is
Which is easy to forget. It's a good point by you.
Yeah. So he's only really in his third quasi year as a linebacker, a former running back at Ole Miss that converted to linebacker. Getting here, you could see the instincts last year. You know, having a Miles Jack as a mentor, another guy who was a running back turned linebacker, made it an easier transition to talk to, but still trying to get the nuances of playing an inside backer in a 3-4 defense is tough, because do I know when to blitz, when to drop, how to green dog, all those little things that he's still learning. But you can see the natural athleticism. A couple times they put him out on outside rush, and he did a phenomenal job. You saw the instincts kind of kick in. But I thought last year the Jacksonville preseason game really is what put him on the radar, and why he made this team was because he started just flooring guys, like just anticipating what the snap was and what the play call was and making a play, made a couple plays in the backfield. And I just want to see more of a elongated approach where he stays in our minds as opposed to those pop plays. And I think that's what we're hoping to see with Mark Robinson, that he takes the next jump, and having a Cole Holcomb and a Landon Roberts there that he can kind of sit behind and learn and get put into situations is going to help him very well. But he's been doing a good job solidly in camp. He hasn't jumped off the page. He looks like he's fitting in now.
Yeah, it looks like he's growing into his body and his position. You would assume or maybe anticipate impactful special teams as a run and hit guy?
Yes, I expect him on kickoff coverage. I expect him to be one of the guys that's down there early, splitting in between and meeting the middle of that return, whatever it is now, because you can't do the daisy chain and form the spear. You gotta separate that a little bit more. I think of him as that guy that can just be a heat-seeking missile on that and punt coverage.
Don't forget, we've got the wrap-up show coming up following practice. That's presented by UPMC Health Plan. I'll be joined by Craig Wolfley for that one. Max, before we wrap things up here, anything on your radar for today? Do you want to see the defense bounce back in 7 shots? Do you want to see the offensive line block somebody on the pass rush for a change? What are you looking forward to today? Now, let me say this. What we've seen the first 2 days confirms it's a lot easier to block with pads.
Yes,
than
it
without.
is. It's very tough to do it with
So your guys are
laundry.
playing kind of with one hand tied behind their back.
I mean, they can't really do anything because the second you grab a jersey, it's flexible. You're taught to clutch, what we call, within the framework of the body. But if a guy's moving in a jersey, it stretches. It's elastic. Yeah. So I expect the offensive line.
Yesterday was kind of easy pass around the edge, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was an easy path. A lot of them went down that way. But I expect the offensive line, the young tackles, to take another jump today to answer the call that Mike Tomlin issued them yesterday and make sure that you're doing a better job with your feet. I think the guys got a little lazy in day 2 with their feet and kind of leaned out, and that's where the defense kind of exploited them. So looking to see the offensive line bounce back with their footwork and their technical prowess. but I also expect to see a little bit more of these young guys. I want to see Keanu Benton and how he's doing in the middle as a nose tackle in that first team unit. Joey Porter
Very
Jr.
interested in that guy this game.
Yeah, him, and actually Trice Jr. I like Trice Jr. He got a couple of good plays where he kind of matched up and had the taller guys, because he's taller than Joey Porter and got just as long arms. So imagine both of those guys competing. So I want to see Trice, I want to see Benton on the defensive side, and then the young tackles. That's what I'm going to be looking at today.
Good stuff. I'll be looking at it along with you. And when practice concludes, don't forget, I'll be back in this very same spot, breaking it down with Craig Wolfley on the wrap-up show that's presented by the UPMC Health Plan. Until then, for Max Starks, I'm Mike Prisuta. Thanks for finding us on Training Camp Live, brought to you by FedEx here on Steelers.com.